All right, so this is going to talk about the bad guys, essentially the bad guys from World War II from an American and Allied perspective. What we're going to seek to do here is to understand their motivations, their ideology, as well as their attempts to expand and show their strength. So we're going to start with Japan. Japan is seeking to expand. Japan, kind of like the United States, started industrialization later than Europe, and just like the United States, tried to gain an empire later than Europe. Japan also tried to gain an empire later. So in the 1930s, they were trying to do that. The problem is by the 1930s, most of the rest of the world was really over it, and Japan seemed overly aggressive. Whereas if they were to do this in the 1800s, it wouldn't have seemed all that bad. Um, so that's maybe some bad timing, or maybe just the world evolving on what imperialism meant. In the early 1930s, the Japanese army took an area of northern China called Manchuria. Notice I said the army. This is not the Japanese government that did this. The army was trying to seize control and exert its influence over Japan as a way of trying to expand its reach. Um, they wanted the resources, the natural resources, raw materials that were available in Manchuria. Japanese government did not authorize this and wanted them to leave. And so if you have a bunch of politicians saying you need to leave and a bunch of guys with guns saying no, we're not going to, the guys with guns are probably gonna win out. Military says no, we're not gonna move, and eventually the government was just taken over by the military. And from the perspective of the Japanese people, they were fine with this because just like what was going on in Germany and Italy, they supported those nationalist goals, Japan above all else, and this was Japan asserting itself and showing strength and trying to dominate the region in a way that they hadn't before, and people really liked that. The problem is when the military takes control of the government's then going to want to do military things, and that's what we see from Japan in the 1930s. In Italy, we see the rise of what's called fascism. Fascism is a system of government that wants to advance the country's interests above all else. Now, what that usually means is that the government and the country more than any individual. And they use fear, they use nationalism, they use hatred of others to advance their cause. And if you're an individual concerned with individual liberties like speech and freedom of press and freedom of expression, you're going to be disappointed with fascism because they don't really tolerate any of that. The symbol for fascism is a bunch of rods tied together with ribbon, where like a single rod can be broken, a bunch of rods together are much stronger. So your individual concerns don't matter because what's most important is the country overall. And while that sounds, well, it should be over everybody, what that typically results in is that the government is doing things and suppressing a lot of individual rights. So the leader of Italy is a guy named Benito Mussolini, and he came to power in the 1920s in Italy, basically by making Italy sound like a victim in previous eras and disrespected, and the world hates you. Let's go show them how strong we are. And he creates a dictatorship, and what we see in fact fascist dictatorships is fairly consistent, outlawing political opposition. You are not allowed to oppose the regime. Um, you are to fall in line and do what you're supposed to do. There's not going to be any elections or anything like that. Um, they take away civil liberties, like we said, and they're going to make sure that you know only what they want you to know, which is what means controlling schools, controlling the media, and just a general lack of information. They kind of prey on that ignorance that they help breed. To show their strength, Italy decides that they want to expand and they want to take back their former colony of Ethiopia. Um, So, of course, Rome used to be the head of the Roman Empire, which is incredibly vast, and Italy was something of an afterthought at this point in the 1920s, 1930s. So, want to regain that old glory, and so invading Ethiopia seemed like the way to do it. And so the Ethiopians asked the League of Nations, can you please help? Which is what the point of the whole League of Nations was, is to stop this kind of aggression. League of Nations says no, because they don't want conflict. So here we get a fundamental contradiction. If you if your organization is committed to stopping conflict and they shy away from conflict, the motivation is there for the aggressive countries to just be more aggressive. And we'll see additional examples of that. The United States is going to stay out of anything and everything. Regret from World War I and the Great Depression now in the 1930s means the United States isn't going to care about what's going on anywhere else. In Germany, of course, we know Adolf Hitler rose to power. There was a lot of anger about the Treaty of Versailles, and as we talked about, it was really harsh towards Germany. And a lot of young men in Germany after World War I were driven to politics or attracted to politics as a way of airing their grievances. And in the 1920s, Hitler joined and kind of remade a group called the National Socialists, even though they weren't socialists. But that, in short, were called the Nazis. So the word socialism there is just branding, just to get workers on their side. They had no interest in socialism. Hitler, we don't want to get in the habit of saying nice things about Hitler, but he was a very gifted public speaker and figured out that he could get people on his side by using that skill, and became a leader of the movement. The Nazis tried for a coup, meaning they tried to take over the German government in 1923. That failed, and he went to prison. And he really only served 6 months. So that's apparently punishment enough for trying to take over the government. When he got out, he decided that if he's going to take over, he's going to gain power, he needs to do it legally through elections and through the passage of laws. Now, not everything, of course, was always on the up and up, but that way he could say he has a legitimate claim to power. So he said, Germans are the best, that we shouldn't be walked on any longer. And I will lead the kind of fascist type rhetoric. I will lead us back to glory. And also, it's helpful for fascism to have enemies, especially enemies within your own country. So he preached hatred of Jewish people and people who were different than like pure-blooded German Aryans. And so that kind of galvanized people to, a lot of whom already hated Jewish people, and kind of focus that hatred on a cause that led him to further consolidate power. The important thing here is he gained power legally. The Nazis continued to gain more and more seats in the legislature until they gained the most. He became chancellor, like the head of the legislature. And then when the president died, he got the legislature to pass a law that gave him that power too, which wasn't intended to be the system. One of the things he argued for was German living space. If he believed that the Germans were the best people in the world, the fact that they were confined to this small area of what was Germany was a travesty to him. So wanting to expand out and expand the reach of the German people. So there's 3 stages of their expansion, 1, 2, and 3. You may need to, this map is in your notes, so you may need to refer to that every once in a while. Step 1 is the Rhineland. This is an area of Germany, but the Treaty of Versailles says that Germany can't put any troops there. And if you're France, you don't want any troops there because that's right on the French border. Belgium too, Netherlands too, to a certain extent. But Germany did it anyway, and it was just kind of a test of what can I get away with. France was alarmed by seeming German aggression, but they're not going to do anything because they don't want to invite war. And if the other side, in this case Germany, knows you absolutely don't want to fight, that there's incentive there to get more and more aggressive. And so they stayed there. So what does Hitler learn from this? He can do whatever he wants. And so he tries another step. He moves to annex Austria. Austria is very closely related to Germany culturally in terms of language and history. Hitler himself was born in Austria. So one of Hitler's big goals is to get all German-speaking people, all ethnic Germans, under his empire, his Reich. And Austria would fall into that category. So it says to Austria, come on with us, you can be part of Germany now. And Austria says, no, we're not going to do that. That's dumb. We want to still be our own country, thank you. And so Hitler sends in troops, but instead of being like a war type invasion, the troops are welcomed in, and this is seen as a good thing for Austria by the Austrian people. Countries around them were growing alarmed by the German expansion and wrote letters like, this is bad, but that's not going to do anything to slow Hitler down. He's probably just going to laugh at that. The third and the most important step is this area called the Sudetenland. It's in Czechoslovakia, but it borders Germany. And there's a lot of German-speaking people there. So Hitler says, I want the Sudetenland, don't make me attack. So there's this conference in Munich, which is a major city in southern Germany, between Great Britain and France and Germany. And Hitler says, if I get the Sudetenland, I'm not going to expand any further. I'm done. And if you're Great Britain or France, you're thinking, great, if that's all it takes, and then we don't have to worry about Hitler anymore, that's awesome. So what Great Britain and France essentially did here was they appeased Hitler. Appeasement is giving somebody what they want just to shut them up. But as we know, if you give in to certain aggression, then that's only inviting further aggression. And Hitler's learning from this again. It's just cementing this lesson that he can do whatever he wants. He doesn't have to worry about a fight. And appeasement only makes the aggressor more aggressive. So that's a pretty bad strategy, and world history has kind of learned from that, maybe not to do that again. So by the time the war breaks out here, we have Germany and this they end up taking more of Czechoslovakia, Austria. They're setting their sights on Poland. The only problem here is that the Soviet Union is also setting its sights on Poland. And so if Germany invades from this way and Soviet Union invades from this way, eventually they're going to fight, and they don't want to fight each other yet. They don't like each other, but they don't want to fight each other yet. So they stun the world, these two countries that hate each other, Germany and the Soviet Union, they stun the world and make an alliance, or at least an agreement, not to fight each other. And so there's the Nazi-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact, which leads to September 1st, 1939. Both countries invade Poland. This is the start of World War I. You're going to need to know this date. It's going to be on the test. The test question is going to be, on what date did Germany and the Soviet Union invade Poland starting World War II? You're going to write in September 1st, 1939. So keep that in mind. 2 days later, France and Britain declare war, even though they didn't want to. Now they had to. And World War II starts. There's this phony war period where war exists, but nobody's fighting yet. We'll talk more about that. And the war goes really badly for the Allies, for Great Britain and France initially. And again, we'll talk more about that in class as we go. So if you guys have any questions, please let me know.